MMOs, boy, they sure are a lot of them, But do you ever get the feeling that they're actually all mostly the exact same MMO? A single game with absolutely no difference in terms of mechanics, pacing, story, even theme. Most of them are the exact same game. It's almost as if someone at some point ran out of ideas, and it wasn't necessarily the developers but the people paying for that game to be made. And to those people I dedicate the top 7 MMOs that should exist but don't. A show dedicated to highlighting just how much more variety there can be in the MMO genre because, as I've said before, in a different voice, on a different show, MMO itself does not really describe any sort of mechanic. It's just the idea of people playing together. And as much as I would like to say that we should make the metaverse and just have everyone dressed like your protagonist, these are more game-oriented MMOs and not just MMOs that are about getting people together, so probably no VR things. Probably. That being said, let's get it started with number 7, an actual racing MMO. Believe it or not, but currently, there's really no such thing left. There used to be Heat Online, which was kind of nice, but we really don't have racing MMOs left. You may be thinking, well, how can you say that? The Crew was released 2 years ago. It's free right now on PC. Go and play it. Go and get it. It's amazing. 2 problems with that. It sucks, and it's not really an MMO. If a game doesn't even let you see the people you're in a party with, or makes you jump through enormous hoops and pray to the other gods to actually be able to party up with them, it's not much of an MMO. It is a single-player game with a big lobby. That's it. In an actual racing MMO, people would not be constrained to just small instances where just 4 or 8 people can race. No, it would be an open world thing where everyone can race anywhere, anytime, anyhow, with any sort of car. It would be a game where you could organize a cannonball run. Not one where you would have to pretend you're doing one and hope no one cheats by using fast travel, but an actual cross-continent race that's enabled by the game's mechanics, by its design. A racing MMO would not have leveling zones. It would not have levels. If you can afford to buy a car, you should be able to. If you can afford to modify it, you should be able to. If you're a good enough driver to actually drive something fast, you should be able to participate in any event, provided you qualify for it. I mean, we don't want to get all the riffraff in the upper tournaments. It would be an MMO that's all about cars and car culture. You could have your own avatar and customize it whatever you want it to be like, and not just be that Gordon Freeman-looking motherfucker named Alex. This would be a game where, when you do try to race a car made for off-road with one made for street cross-country, you could. Because, spoiler, you can't do that in the Crew. The races that actually are in the game that span a long distance impose a single class of car. Because if it didn't, the game wouldn't be crap. An actual racing MMO would just focus on racing, not on a shitty story that was rejected from Need for Speed, not on cinematics, not on characters, but on you, your car, the road, the scenery, and most importantly, not on bullshit statistics brought about by magic components that seemingly out of nowhere give cars extra points. No, it would be just performance, it would be physics. It would be a game with actual goddamn physics. It's 2016. We have gigabit coming out of our ears in Eastern Europe. What's your excuse for not having an MMO that has actual server tech? The Crew probably has one a second. Maybe it checks if anyone in the overworld did something, and collisions are horrible. A racing MMO would actually try to not be that, so it would not be the Crew. Number 6, a car combat MMO. Now, the racing game would not just cover cars. It would probably cover motorcycles at some point, maybe even speedboats, but this one would be just focused on cars. And you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, hasn't this been done before? Wasn't it named, something like Auto Assault, and it failed badly because it was a miserable game, and in no way because NCSoft was severely mismanaging every MMO other than Lineage at that point? Well, yeah, you would be sort of correct, but currently there aren't any actual combat MMOs focused on cars. There are World of Tanks clones. I've been in the alpha and beta of one of those clones. I kept expecting it to get an overworld where you would go and traverse the landscape that reminds me of Mad Max, making a kick-ass car, fighting other players in their kick-ass cars, but it's not that. It's just an arena shooter with cars. Now, because it would be a car combat MMO, building your car out of scrap would be an important factor, out of components that may be hard to get, that you may actually have to fight over, and in this one, making this one have a leveling component where you would get more skills, I would say, to allow you to specialize your car. Yeah, that would make sense in this one. This would be a more traditional-ish MMO in the progression sense, but still, in terms of combat, it would be based on physics, based on, if you can't do physics, attacks at those speeds, yeah, I get it, but at least do a good hit scan. Not tabbed combat, where you just tab, then 1, 2, 3, no. Actually slamming into the opposition. Actually using the armored part of your car, the one with spikes, to just tear through other machines. Use rocket launchers, use machine guns, use flamethrowers, use goddamn lasers at one point. Just make it an exciting car combat game set in an open world where everyone can do just about everything. Like form bands of roving fuel hunters or something, terrorizing the peasants in their... Again, I'm going with the Mad Max theme here, but you could put it in just about any kind of setting. As long as the basic idea of it being a combat-focused car game that doesn't do World of Warcraft combat, it would be fine. And again, lots of customization needed to actually be able to build your own combat wagon. Number 5, the Crimson Skies MMO. If you haven't played Crimson Skies, well, you're probably not a fan of flight games, I get it. It's a flight combat game. It's actually a tabletop that became a video game. So, you missed out on one of the greatest thematically rich games I've ever seen. This game just has flair to it. It's bursting out of the seams with personality. It's set in an alternative version of the 30s, I believe, where the US sort of failed and it turned into a lot of bickering states. And then the Hindenburg never happened, in the sense that it never crashed, so Zeppelins are everywhere. And because people use them for transportation, personal and for goods and for everything else, sky pirates appear. Yes, people with their own Zeppelins acting as bases of operation for launching fleets of planes to just rob other Zeppelins, or trains, or anything. Imagine that. Imagine a world where you would be one of those pirates, building your way up to owning one day your own Zeppelin, of having your own band of pirates. That would be a guild, a band of pirates, soaring through the skies in a giant open world, fighting against other player guilds, pirates, Zeppelins, using an actual flight model. Yeah, even if it's a bit arcadey like Crimson Skies was, it should be that. Again, not World of Warcraft combat. You actually have to aim things, like the way War Thunder does it, or even World of Warplanes. That kind of combat in an actual MMO where you could fly your plane to places far away, fly your Zeppelin to places far away as well. Slower though because it's big. And you can upgrade planes. You could get plans to make better planes. You could get resources. You could need fuel to get that thing going most of the time. You could even have NPC wingmen, which you have to pay with some of the booty you get from your pillaging. And that whole thing would be enriched by the theme, the 20s Hollywood bonanza. That style, that romantic style. You really should play Crimson Skies to get a feel for it. Imagine that in an MMO. Preferably one without any sort of, well, at least not a lot of progression in terms of skill, unless you, okay, let's say you could go the EVE Online route, where you have passively progressing skills that allow you to pilot bigger aircraft, more diverse aircraft, the Zeppelin itself, stuff like that. Number 4, the Vampire the Masquerade MMO. Well, technically the World of Darkness MMO, but Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines just rocked. It was a game that had mood ripping out its ears. It was a game that was so well defined in every aspect of its world, of its characters, of its lore. It had great gameplay as well, and oh my god, so many bugs. So many bugs, and it was unfinished in a lot of ways. Translate that into an MMO. Translate that intrigue, that core element of Vampire as a social theater game, as an improvised intrigue game. Translate that into an MMO and you will have something amazing. Now, to be fair, CCP, back when they weren't completely evil, did start out to make this game, but they did turn a bit evil, with the monocles and all, and in the end they decided to cancel the game and just sell the property to Paradox, which now owns all the assets of that game. They haven't said they will try and restart production, but they haven't said they won't. So there's actually a chance this may happen, and if it does, it will be amazing. At its core, Vampire the Masquerade is a very social game, but one that actually has gameplay knitted into its social aspects, because you have a hierarchy. You have a world of darkness that needs to be hidden from the normal people. You have the Masquerade. You can be a vampire. You can be a mage. You can be, well, I'm not really sure how the werewolves work or how the Frankenstein. There's a lot of things in the world of darkness, but focusing just on vampire, just that bit as a starting point, could be an MMO like we have not seen since, well, ever. Though there is a game that is trying to do social gameplay called Everjane, which is looking quite nice currently. Number 3, an asymmetrical MMO. Now, a lot of games have tried to give players the experience of not starting on a level playing field. Some have done it intentionally with the actual express wish to give players a more varied gameplay experience, like Left 4 Dead, like Giants, like Evolve even, and others have done, mostly MMOs have done this by just having an item mall where people could just pay to win, and generally being more powerful than everyone else. Let's take that idea but remove the pay to win aspect. Some players will start in this game, in this asymmetrical MMO, as different kind of creatures, monsters, giant monstrosities, terrorizing villagers and having their own objective, their own way of life, their own way of playing. Maybe they have to feed, maybe they have to replicate themselves, maybe they have to build a lair. They're big, they're powerful, they're strong, and they're constantly evolving. Meanwhile, other players, like a whole lot of them, are hunters. They train, they fight, with the objective of one day being able to take down that giant monstrosity. So basically, Evolve turned into an MMO and a much better game. Now, because this would require some progression, there should be some neutral enemies that the player must fight. There should be ways in which the creature itself can grow, so that would imply eating people or eating other players. Like, there are details to be clarified here in terms of just what would prevent a giant creature from just not being killable because the players spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week playing and eating people, or what would happen when the players destroy every monster, and who exactly decides who's the monster and who's the hunter, because people are gonna like to be the monster most of the time unless you can have some really, really cool hunters. So yeah, those are details that really need to be clarified and set in stone and, developed. But once they are, and hey, people can brainstorm a lot. Like, at one point I designed a game based around Chris coming to life with a friend and terrorizing everyone. Once those tiny insignificant details which boil down to being the whole game are sorted out, this could be a unique experience, a very interesting one. Yeah, there's been games in the past, well, apart from the pay-to-win ones, there were games like Arch, something that allowed one player to become Arch something or other that would have powers over... I don't remember the details, but it wasn't as interesting as this. As interesting as basically Evolve or Giant Citizen Kabuto in an MMO format. And again, like every other game possible, it should not have World of Warcraft combat. Instead, why not give it combat similar to Shadow of the Colossus or something, or that Monster Hunter thing, or the Dragon's Dogma thingamajig? Yeah, why not? It would be fun. And speaking of fun, number 2, a Discworld MMO. In terms of setting, in terms of stories and characters, and just the potential to do a ton of crap, Discworld is really up there with probably unlimited potential. The series of books written by the great Terry Pratchett would be an excellent foundation for an MMO world. One filled with wizards, one with technology, one with witches, one with elemental gods, one with regular gods, one with a god that was once a turtle that fell on someone's head, actually twice, one with geriatric heroes that set about to destroy said gods with a giant bomb, one where death is just, a person, well, not a person, he's dead, but still, he's a mellow fellow, sometimes going by the name of Bill Dor. It would be an excellent setting for a kind of MMO that, again, doesn't have World of Warcraft combat. Instead, it can be an adventure MMO. Now, what do I mean by an adventure MMO? Is it gonna be based entirely on puzzles? Having played the Discworld game, no, it should not be based entirely on puzzles, because Discworld is an insane world that doesn't function by the laws of physics and reason. In that world, sound travels faster than light, or just about as fast, because light is being slowed down by the intense magical field of the disc, which sits atop 4 elephants that stand on top of the Great Atoon, a turtle that flies through space. But an adventure MMO, something that requires you to talk to characters, to engage with them, to discover things, even solve the odd mystery, again, not puzzle, but mystery, more akin to some of the stuff you would see in the Secret World, because a lot of what you see in the Secret World are puzzles, and sometimes good ones. You could even have some form of combat, a limited combat, I would say, depending on the role of the characters. Like, if you're in the Watch, you would have to catch criminals and fight them. If you were in Borgovia, a country that's constantly at war with everyone else, yeah, you could have some combat there, but it would still be more about adventuring. And also, if you're a wizard, you would have to kill the other wizards to advance in rank through Rube Goldberg devices, or just catching them with a fireball in the face when they're not looking. Until Raid Cully comes along and people decide it's better to stop doing that. Yeah, I know that the vagueness of the actual gameplay is a bit off-putting, but again, you could make an excellent, not traditional MMO combat game, but with exploration and quests that aren't stupid. You could make such a thing in this game. You could even have some progression in it depending on what you are. If you're a wizard, if you're starting up as a recruit in the Watch, or if you're starting a movie company, if you're starting a press company, you could make it. Well, fundamentally, this would be like The Sims in this world. Except you are the Sim, you don't just control multiple Sims, you have to live there. It would be like a life simulator in this world, meaning you'd probably end up being killed by an assassin player and dumped in the Ankh, where you would not sink, because the Ankh is the kind of river that doesn't actually flow, but it mostly crawls, on account of it being filled with dead bodies and a lot of other stuff. Awful, awful stuff. And lastly, number 1, an Elder Scrolls MMO. I mean, just think about it. You've played Morrowind, you've played Oblivion, you've played Skyrim, you've played Daggerfall. Imagine an MMO set in the whole of Tamriel. An MMO that spans Cyrodiil, that spans Skyrim, that spans Morrowind, that spans Hammerfell, that spans all those places that you've encountered in the previous games. One where you would start as a character, a random, no-name, simple person just deciding one day, you know what, I'm gonna stop being a goddamn peasant and do something with my life. I'm gonna go climb that mountain and fight that dragon. And then it eats you, but that's another matter. It would be a game where you could just fight things, like in Skyrim with maybe a more advanced combat system that Skyrim had because, it's the year 2016. No one uses dial-up anymore. We can have actual combat. You could have a game where you could craft your own spells, where you could craft, you could do a lot of things with crafting. I mean, Skyrim has the ability to craft your own house, actually, in the very, very not very good DLC that's actually no point to buying it because you can do that with mods. You can have guild structures, like actual guild structures the way they were in Morrowind, where you can advance in levels depending on what your skills are and, on what you do for the actual guild. And at the end, if, for example, in the Mages Guild in Morrowind, I had to actually fight the Grand Master to take his place. Though I didn't actually take his place because I wasn't skilled enough at the time, but the current quest I was on required me to do so in order to get the guild to support my thing for the main story quest. Imagine doing that in an MMO, just fighting another player, or at first an NPC because they have to be rolled by someone at first, and becoming the leader of that guild. You deciding what that guild does, what it focuses on, and then someone saying, hey you, I'm gonna challenge you to combat, or to a show of magic, or to something, or to a contest of thievery. And you do that. And the Assassin's Guild, you can get contracts from other players to do assassinations on other players, or on NPCs. Even on NPC, I could kill every NPC in the game. Even the ones that are story important, the story could just shift around them. They wouldn't just magically respawn like the second they died. That would be utterly stupid. It would just break all sense of immersion. And there would be laws, there would be actual laws that are enforced by guards, but not immortal guards that have more power than most players do. Like Scorpion's chains from some reason, the spear Scorpion throws, that would be utterly stupid. It would have a system of laws that would try to keep the peace, but at some point you just have to realize that some players would be so strong, so powerful, that they could just lay waste to a city if they felt like it, and then other players, if they're on the side of the law, if they decide to be guardsmen or decide to be keepers of the peace, justice things, they could go after those players. They could be entrusted to keep the peace, to guard the world. It would be such a phenomenal MMO. Too bad no one ever thought about making an Elder Scrolls MMO into life. They could even have a PvP mode where you could build your own keeps, your own castles to defend, your property. You could become the steward of Hammerfell or something. You could declare it a sovereign nation separate from the Empire. It would be fantastic. It would be fabulous. Again, too bad no one ever came up with the idea of making an Elder Scrolls MMO. Well, that's it for the top 7 MMOs that should exist but currently under no circumstances are actually real or available to be played. Kinda sad, isn't it? It sure is.
Thank you for watching this show. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of our other videos and maybe sharing them or giving a thumbs up if you feel like it. And if you really liked what you saw, please check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you could help us make much better shows and get some rewards in the process. Or you could consider buying my book called Tale of Doom. Volume 1 is out now and available for just $2. And as always, if you thought it was horrible, you know where to find me and complain about it.